Perhaps one of the most powerful and mysterious orders of medieval Europe was, of course, the Order of the Knights Templar. Today, we possess a significant amount of information about them, ranging from speculation and legends to actual facts. In 1099, the Crusaders managed to capture Jerusalem and establish a sacred Christian state. After that, there was an increased influx of pilgrims to the Holy Sepulchre, and the care for their needs and protection was taken on by the Order of Knights Templar, founded in 1119 by Hugues de Payens. Gradually, the knightly orders returned to their homelands. The Knights Templar also returned, as peasant uprisings flared up in southern France, Germany, and northern Italy. Equally mysterious were the Knights Hospitaller. This is precisely what today's video is about. The First Crusade, which ended in a victory for the Christian army, paradoxically worsened the situation for Christian pilgrims making the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Previously, after paying the required taxes and fees, they could rely on the protection of local rulers. However, the new rulers of the Holy Land had effectively lost control of the roads, making traveling without armed guards extremely dangerous. There were few resources available to establish basic order in the conquered lands, and each year there were fewer resources. Many of the Crusaders believed that by capturing Jerusalem, they had fulfilled their duty and could now joyfully return home, leaving it to God to take care of the fate of the liberated city. Those who remained were barely enough to maintain power in strategically important cities and castles. In 1118, the French knight Hugues de Payens and 8 of his comrades offered free escort services to pilgrims without their own protection, accompanying them from the shores of the Mediterranean Sea to Jerusalem. In the year 1118, French knight Hugues de Payens and 8 of his companions offered free services to pilgrims without their own protection, escorting their caravans from the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Jerusalem. This marked the beginning of a new knightly order, to which King Baldwin II of Jerusalem granted the title of the former Mosque Al-Aqsa on the Temple Mount. This location was once home to the famous Temple of Solomon, making it a sacred and symbolic place. Naturally, such a prestigious location influenced the name of the order, though in Europe it was better known as the Knights Templar. The knights themselves were referred to as Templars or Templar Knights. Their selfless, albeit only at first, readiness to protect strangers at the real risk of their lives made a huge impression both in Palestine and in Europe. However, the majority of pilgrims who needed the protection of the Templars were not wealthy, and for a whole 10 years their gratitude was purely symbolic, almost platonic. Eventually, once they gained official recognition and support from the Church, the Templar Knights began to receive donations from prominent individuals more frequently, initially in the form of money, and later in the form of land and property. By 1129, the order had acquired its first land holdings in Europe. The initiative was shown by Queen Teresa of Portugal. In 1134, King Alfonso I of Aragon followed her example, bequeathing part of his holdings in northern Spain to the order. In 1137, the Templars received their first holdings in England from Queen Matilda. The Breton Duke Conan gifted an island off the coast of France to the Templars. In 1170, the order acquired land in Germany. In 1170, the order acquired lands in Germany. Very quickly, literally before the eyes of astonished contemporaries, the Order of the Poor Knights transformed into a powerful military-political organization. Its goals and tasks were expanded to geopolitical ones. The Templars became a serious factor in international politics. And now, interest in serving among their ranks was shown not only by adventurers, whom any European country considered lucky to be rid of, but also by younger sons from good families. The risk of getting stuck in ordinary positions was minimal. On one hand, knights died in constant clashes with Muslims. On the other hand, in the ownership of the order, lands evolved into new priories, thus creating new vacancies. According to the Statute of 1128, members of the order consisted of knights and serving brothers. Monastic brothers also joined them. Knights wore white cloaks with octagonal crosses, committing to observe the rule of adventure, poverty, and obedience. In peacetime, they resided in the order's shelters. The order itself became the inheritor of their property. In the early 13th century, the order was the wealthiest organization in Europe, whose power seemed limitless. If in the second half of the 12th century the annual income of the order reached 54 million francs, then by the early 13th century it had already reached 112 million. The main treasury was housed in the Paris Temple. Therefore, monks from many countries looked with envy and covetousness at the treasure of the Templars. Temptation to fill the gaps in the state budget with the treasure of the temple was simply irresistible. And unlike the English king Henry III, Philip already felt strong enough to attempt to destroy the powerful order. And unlike the English king Henry III, Philip already felt strong enough to attempt to destroy the powerful order. Next, my friends, let's turn to the somewhat unofficial history of this order. Indeed, it is a controversial organization, within which, of course, certain structures could have infiltrated that could have ultimately undermined it from within. But these are just speculations. So, during its active existence, the Order of the Templars was seen by contemporaries as a kind of magical institute. The Knights of the Temple were suspected of sorcery, witchcraft, and alchemy. It was believed that many of the Templars were connected to dark forces in quotation marks. As early as 1228, Pope Innocent III called upon the Templars to order due to their unchristian actions and summoning of spirits. It is known that the Templars dreamed of establishing on earth the kingdom of peace and the unity of all peoples, for which they allegedly engaged in esoteric research and the search for interfaith churchness based on Gnostic teachings. Churchness was understood in its original sense from the Greek ecclesia, meaning the unity of people united by ideas. In particular, there is a version in which representatives of the Roman Catholic Church accused the Templars of borrowing the symbol of androgyna from the Gnostics. For them, this was an occult image of universal unity. It was depicted as a winged figure perched on a cube. And subsequently, the act of worshipping androgyna was blamed on the Templars. Androgyna among the Gnostics had its name and was called Baphomet by the Templars. In the early 13th century, the order was the wealthiest organization in Europe, whose power seemed limitless. But it is interesting. My friends, here is another matter. But interestingly, friends, here is something different. Later research has shown that most likely, inside the Templar order, there was a narrow circle of initiates who developed and guarded from outsiders a much deeper occult doctrine than the pursuers of the Holy Grail could imagine. That is, on the one hand, we have 2 points of view. One, that they were chaste, and the other, that indeed within the order, let's say, after several centuries, a certain group emerged, either with the aim of discrediting the order, or with the aim of its internal destruction, created something like their own occult circle. But here, friends, the further we go, the more mysterious and interesting it gets. In the 18th century, in Hamburg, 2 documents were found that date back to the Middle Ages. They contained a secret code of conduct for the Grail Knights who had reached the inner circle of the order and supplemented the church charter. These were the statutes of the Chosen Brothers and the statutes of the Comforted Brothers. Doesn't this remind you of anything? After all, it is exactly such structures that could also be found in other secret societies. In the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Rosicrucians, and so on. That initially the Order of the Knights Templar was really created as something noble, meant to serve humanity, God, and the world. And then certain hostile forces infiltrated and perverted the entire concept, separating themselves and their circle from the rest of society. There are numerous versions about the esoteric secrets of the Templars. To this day, works dedicated to this topic continue to emerge. Another no less interesting fact. The modern alchemist Eugene Canceli, author of the book The Two Dwellings of Alchemists, believes that he has managed to interpret the most mysterious and complex of the Templars' drawings. Modern alchemist Eugene Canceli, author of the book The Two Dwellings of Alchemists, believes that he has managed to interpret the most mysterious and complex of the Templars' drawings. According to his version, the Templars knew how earthly cycles would develop up to the apocalypse. Here is what the author himself writes about it. On the wall of one of the chambers, the Templars sitting in the dungeon of Château de Chinon, awaiting execution, left among other no less interesting graffiti, a brief outline of the development of nature. On the side of the door frame, a circle scratched with a stiletto on the soft stone stands out, the right side of which is marked by two vertical lines. Indeed, the Golden and Silver Ages ended when in 1308, the adepts of the Temple Order presented to their descendants an image of the relentless march of time. And now, the most important question. Why did the King of France Philip IV accuse the Templars of worshipping evil? After returning to their homeland, the Templars became one of the most popular and wealthiest social groups in Europe. 90% of their group consisted of lay members. That is, non-military civilians who essentially dealt with investments and other financial matters. The Order of the Templars could well have become one of the first multinational corporations ever formed. Moreover, one of the richest in the world. However, this posed a problem for the French king after the end of the war of his country with England. He was in debt to the Templars and was not sure he could find the money to settle with this influential group. Nevertheless, he did not want to take risks, as ignoring the debt could lead to a military coup involving the Templars. Nevertheless, he did not want to take risks, because ignoring it could lead to a military coup involving the Templars. Instead, the king came up with another way. In 1307, King Philip IV accused many Knight Templars of worshipping Baphomet and other crimes against the faith. The knights were tortured until they confessed to the crimes and then were burned at the stake. By the way, legend has it that as the Grand Master of the Templar Order, Jacques de Molay, was dying on the stake, he cursed Pope Clement V and King Philip IV. And indeed, shortly after, all these people died. Yes, under torture. Almost all the knights confessed to worshipping Baphomet, although strangely, none of them could accurately describe what this idol looked like. This fact led many to believe that King Philip IV's accusation was a fiction to nullify his debt. Friends, as we can see, things are not as straightforward as they may seem at first glance. It is quite possible that some group within the order could have existed. Or perhaps this is entirely a fiction of the monarch, who simply did not want to repay his debt. Write about it in the comments. What do you think? And of course, do not forget to give a thumbs up if you liked the video and it made you think. Subscribe to the channel. Follow our other social networks. And of course, share the video with like-minded people. Goodbye, everyone. Subtitle Editor A. Semkin